Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Pin Tool Podcast. My name is Al Wayman, owner of Creek Road Pottery in Laceyville, Pennsylvania, next to the cold Tuscarora Creek. Pull up a chair around the wheel as we discuss topics concerning the art and craft of pottery, good books, storytelling, marketing, and creating work that matters for folks who
Greetings,
care.
friends. Welcome to another episode of the Pin Tool Podcast. This is Season 4, Episode 5, and we're going to be taking a break in this episode from the 12-Step Artist Way workshop that we were doing, and we're going to talk about the spring show I had here, 2025, and I wanted to go over a few things that I learned about life and about the kilns. So the Tuscarora Creek's been running kind of cold. We had temperatures in the 50s, and then it dropped right back down, and it was almost like spring was here. And then I went out to open the shop, day 2 of the show, and we had about a half an inch of snow on the ground. So that all melted by noon, but still the wind has been horrible here the last 3 days, and it's been very cold and windy. Even though the temperatures have been in the 40s, with the wind, it's just terrible. So I had to fight the wind, firing the kilns and firing all the work out for the show. And so that was part of the struggle. They were able to boil sap up at Back Road Maple, my neighbors, and they were selling sap on the local trail, the bunny trail that we had, and that's still going on at the time of this episode. It is now Saturday night after the show, and we have one more day, Sunday, so they'll be making maple syrup up there on the hill. The smell in their sap house is amazing. I remember my dad and I making maple syrup, boiling it out. It all started with a question that I had about sap. We were down walking next to the Strucka Creek back home where I grew up in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. And my dad seen water running out the tree, and he says, hey, looks like the sap's going up the trees. And he said if you taste it, it tastes a little bit sweet. And I was like, oh, what do they use it for? Whatever. I don't think I said that at the time, but he said, yeah, you can make maple syrup out of it. He says, wait here. I'll run up to the house and get the drill. So I was probably like 8 years old, waited down by the old maple tree down by the creek, and Dad came back with the hand drill, drilled a hole. Then he took some sumac, and he pushed the pulp out of it, made like a little straw, and he tapped it in the hole, and sap ran out, and I tasted it. I told him we should try making maple syrup. He thought it was a good idea. So we made a small batch that year on the kitchen stove, I think, and then it went into a full-scale operation. By year 2, we had the lawn tractor, and we had a big drum on the back collecting the sap, and we had a sap house, and Dad had my Uncle Ray weld together 2 50-gallon drums, cut sections of it out for a sap boiler. And then my dad found from one of the neighbors a big stainless steel dairy milk cooler. It was kind of like a big container. It wasn't a bulk tank. It was a round container that maybe bottles of milk sat in, Not exactly sure, but this thing was huge, and it was stainless steel, and we poured all the sap into that, and then smaller pots. And there was nothing like sitting in the sap house, smelling that sap, doing your homework after school, and taking a drink when it was almost ready to turn the syrup. Some of the best times were from those years collecting those saps with my dad, from just asking a question about sap and the trees. So, for this conversation, we're going to go and we're going to hang out by the kiln. And we're going to finish up one last small load of raku pots. I haven't done raku pots here in a long time. I decided to do them for the spring show. And I had some glaze way back that was given to me by my mentor from Wildflower Pottery. And gunmetal gray, it was called. But the flashings on the work that comes out is pretty amazing. And so there's a lot of copper oxide in there, and a lot of cobalt oxide and iron. So it's a pretty nice mix. I loved using it, and if reduced in the right ways, you can get some amazing results. So I already did 2 loads of that. So we're going to go down, sit around the kiln, and we're going to talk about the spring show, what we already did, and then what I'm going to be looking forward to, right? So go get your coffee. The wind's kind of blowing down there, right? It's going to be cold. So bring your chair and a big coat, right? There's always room around the kiln, and we'll just have a chat while we wait for the cone drop. All right, so I'll see you out there, friends. All right, welcome, friends. Pull up a chair around the kiln, and let me check in the peephole here. Make sure that we're getting good color. I just did a little turn up, so we got probably another 45 minutes, I would say, before it comes to temp. So what I wanted to talk about was a few things that happened to me while I was prepping for the Spring Show 2025. So I wanted to do quite a few beer mugs. So I did probably about 20 beer mugs. And then I ended up having probably another 40 mugs. So this was a big beer mug and mug show. I already had quite a few bowls. And then I wanted to throw some large raku pots. So I did 10 of those, 10-inch vases, so they weren't too bad to pull out of the kiln. I had this iron glaze that I wanted to try, and it wasn't that I wanted to try it, to tell you the truth. It was simply an easy mix, because I had the base mix, and then it was just throw in the right amount of iron oxide. And even though I was on vacation, I was exhausted when the time to glaze came. So I fired all the pots. I had 2 loads in the updrafts, and they were packed full, and all the pots came out. And I looked at all the bisqueware, and I was in despair, right? Because now I had to glaze all of these pots. And I remembered that the iron glaze was the easiest to mix. And there's only 1 oxide in it, so there's only 4 raw materials in this glaze. And it was nice. I when I started the pottery, I picked a base glaze that I could mix when I was really tired, because I knew I'd be at times mixing these glazes either after I got done with a 12-hour rotating shift at the paper factory, coming off nights, coming home mornings, mixing a glaze maybe, or after work, mixing a glaze. So I decided to mix that red glaze, the hand mix. So I glazed all the pots, that same hand mix. And I wouldn't suggest glazing all your pots the same color, only if you can manipulate the firings and how the pots will look when they come out. So there's so much modeling and character and flashings from the flame and everything in the gas kiln. Every shelf is a different temperature, slightly, and the pots on the bottom do not look like the pots on the top, do not look like the pots in the middle. And if you have a glaze that does interesting things with the different temperatures and the different atmospheres in the kilns, you can create some pretty amazing, unique pieces, even though everything is all glazed with the same glaze. So that's how I came about the firing schedules that I work with. I first started doing the full body reduction when I was helping Bill Moon fire the wood kiln out at Imagine Peace Pottery, and he did a full body reduction at Cone 06, and I wanted to try it in the gas kilns. I glazed everything with a copper glaze, and it was like a seafoam green, but reduced. You get some amazing reddish colors, and putting a heavy reduction at the end created a interesting look to the pots that was carbon trapping. And if you haven't seen carbon trapping or not sure what that is, smoke out the kiln, and a lot of that smoke is baked right into the glaze, right? So a lot of that fuel, that carbon, and so that ended up being amazing, because the pots not only came out with this mottled look of heavy reduction where the flames hit it differently on them all, they also had these smoke lines running through it. So this time I wanted to try it using the heavy iron glaze that I had. So I put all the pots in, fired out the beer mugs first, and some of the other larger pieces. And I think I went a bit too long, because I over-reduced and got temperature variation inside the kiln to where, even though the cone dropped correctly, telling me that it came to temperature, there were certain areas of the kiln that did not reach temperature due to being over-reduced. So when I pulled it open, I thought I just messed up the whole load. I had those bubbles that happen just before the glaze smooths out. But the cone was telling me it reached temperature, it reached work heat. So I assumed the pots were done. So I showed it to some friends, and they were like, "Hey Al, don't panic, run them all back through." So I ran the firing again, and it worked out great. I did not do the full body reduction at cone 06, and I only reduced at the end for 15 minutes rather than half hour, an hour. And the pots came out looking pretty amazing. And the reds put on a big show. So I was pretty happy about that. The second kiln load that I fired was in a larger kiln. So I think the atmosphere in there, even though I did reduce it very much the same way, had space to even out. Because when I opened the second one, I thought I would have 2 disaster loads. But the second one seemed to be fine. So I breathed a sigh of relief because now I would at least have a few pots to put out. And that's why I was running the philosophy of a 1-pot show. If you have 1 pot, that means you put in the effort, put in the time to show up with that 1 pot, right? You only need 1 pot for a show. And I tried to tell that to my community and my followers and people like that if you got here and all I had was 1 pot, I was still showing up. I still put in the work to make a thing that maybe mattered for somebody who cared, right? They're showing up. So I got through that. Then the wind was just horrible. I wanted to do raku. So I had this really old burner that came with the kiln, my little Amico. It's the first kiln I ever had. It was my first little updraft. And it actually came from the same town I live in now. But way back, I didn't know I'd be living here. So that's really ironic. But I remember when I was doing my apprenticeship at the Pottery, Wildflower Pottery, I was looking for a small gas kiln, and I was starting to buy used equipment. And me and my dad, we ran down to Laceyville, Pennsylvania, crossed the bridge, went over the river. And in there was an older gentleman who had this little nice Amico kiln in upstairs of his garage. And it was vented and the whole thing. So I got the hood and the whole thing. So brought it down, and I didn't get it hooked up for some time because the gas company had to come out, and I didn't know too much about gas kilns at the time. And they hooked it up, and then we were able to do a firing. I think I did a cone 6 firing. At the time, I was testing brick clay out of the creek, out of the Strucker Creek near Brant, PA. And I still have some friends down there who have volunteered to give me some of that clay to make the beer mugs. So that might be a project. But anyways, I brought it back, did a firing in my first little updraft from Amico. And that's the one that I put together. But that burner underneath was shaped differently. It kind of had like an L shape to it, and it went under, and you had to adjust the airflow to it with the rings in the back. Well, I wasn't making temp the other night. Couldn't figure it out. I almost ran out a whole tank of gas, small tank. I used the small 20-pounders, just trying to work the problem. And so finally I went back to one of my other burners that I knew worked. I even changed the regulator, put in a regulator that I knew worked. I got looking down in there, and here a wasp nest was stuck in the airport, and it wasn't allowing proper airflow. But I used the burner we're using now right here, that I got from Axner Pottery way back when they had the burning kits, the electric to gas little burners that you could set right on your kiln. I mean, your kiln can set right on top of it if you had a medium-sized kiln. And cut a hole in the top and the bottom, and this kit would It's like a square, and it has a 5/16 hole. You could build it yourself if you've seen it. But when I first started here, I went and bought 2 of those because I fired updrafts here. This is way back before I got the Olympic kilns. But so I was able to get it to temperature finally and do the first few raku pieces again for the 2025 show. I had a few that were thrown a little bit uneven, so I used regular stoneware. I did not use raku, but I did put the pots in, and I know that my bases were a little bit uneven in thickness, so I lost probably over half of the 10 inchers, but I was able to save, I think, at least 5 that did not crack. So I was happy to at least get those, and I already sold 2. So it more than made up for the gas tank that I burned out trying to troubleshoot that wasp nest. So if you're not using things will get plugged up. The mud wasps will get in and plug up your regulators and plug up your hoses, and it's just pretty terrible. So the show went fairly decent. Quite a few people came by. Not as many as previous years, but I'm never going to complain. Every show is about selling at least just 1 pot. Everything over that is extra, and I'm really grateful for the support of the local community. People come down, they talk, and my family's been very supportive, and I care about them all. And my Uncle Will stopped in, and he's gonna help with the wood kiln. He's gonna help get me wood. And then my Aunt Barb is here. Aunt Joni makes the bowl cozies, so she was here. He even talked to some of the customers that came in who loved her bowl cozies, so that was kind of nice. So overall, it's been a really fun show, and I learned so much, especially firing those gas kilns, learning about reduction, learning about carbon trapping, learning about raku, what to do, what not to do, and what I need more practice on. Well, I'm going to check the people again and see where that cone's at. Might be halfway bent by now. And then we'll need to get the little nests of burnables ready in the bins, and then we'll pull some pots. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed that. Feel free to check out my website. I have some articles there. If you haven't, sign up to get something every day. If you care about that, the Pottery Dailies. And hopefully people have been enjoying that. Come by my Facebook if you're around, or over on Blue Sky, say hello, and give this podcast a like. It helps me out, and it lets me know that you're out there and enjoying it. So chat about Amelia. She had the night off tonight. She's been working really hard for these shows, especially around the advertising, and so maybe at some point we'll talk to her in the next episode. Alright, so take care, friends, and keep making work that matters for people who care.